Charles Darwin University acknowledges all First Nations people across the lands on which we live and work, and we pay our respects to elders, past, present and emerging. Welcome to this language and learning support workshop, Practice Your Paraphrasing. You may have already attended or watched our workshop entitled Paraphrasing and Synthesizing Resources. This workshop will give you the opportunity to practice your paraphrasing skills. In this workshop, you will review the reasons for paraphrasing, recap strategies for paraphrasing, check your ability to recognize good from bad paraphrasing, and participate in activities to improve your paraphrasing skills. As a university student, you will learn quickly that paraphrasing is considered to be an extremely important skill. But why do we need to paraphrase? Pause this recording and note down a few reasons why you think this skill is important. Okay, hopefully you came up with a couple of good ideas. One reason we paraphrase is to make our writing more concise. Not every author with a good idea expresses it clearly and succinctly. Paraphrasing can also contribute to the flow of your writing. Quotes can disrupt your paragraphs. Perhaps they are in a different tense or a different register. Which brings us to the next reason in our list. When you paraphrase, you can adapt the style or tone of the original author to more closely match your own writing style or to make ideas more accessible to your reader. A really important reason that we want to paraphrase well is that good paraphrasing demonstrates to our reader, usually our professor or lecturer, that we really understand what we are learning in our unit or course. Keep these ideas in mind as we work on paraphrasing skills today. Writing a good paraphrase is a complex process, and we need a range of skills to paraphrase well. If you merely change a word here or there, or modify the sentence structure of the original source, you are unlikely to create a good paraphrase. What does successful paraphrasing entail? Here are some suggestions. First and foremost, comprehension is an underlying requirement for good paraphrasing. If you don't understand what you have read, how are you going to express ideas in your own words? Don't start paraphrasing until you have a deep understanding of what you have read. This might require reading many times. You may need a dictionary. You may even need to ask a fellow student or lecturer for help. But I say again, don't begin to paraphrase until you have a good grasp of your source material. Another part of the art of paraphrasing is realizing that you can't paraphrase everything. You need to be able to identify specialist vocabulary and technical terms that should not be changed. Will changing the word internet to information superhighway make a positive contribution to your writing? Probably not. It will more likely signal to your audience that you need to improve your paraphrasing skills. Although we don't want to find synonyms for everything, being able to use appropriate synonyms is vital to successful paraphrasing. Remember that, while synonym tools in your software or using a thesaurus can be very helpful, not all suggested synonyms are going to be useful. You need to make the judgment call by considering meaning, tone, and context. We will look at this in more detail later in the recording. Only once you are sure you understand what you have read and you have given some thought to word choices should you think about drafting your paraphrase. When you do this, you should ensure that your paraphrase does not mirror the grammar of the original text. So you will need to think about changing aspects of grammar such as active or passive voice, word class, and clause order. One strategy students often forget is comparison. When you think you have written a good paraphrase, compare it to the original text and make sure you haven't accidentally been influenced or unintentionally copied from your source. This happens more easily than you might think. Once you believe you have successfully paraphrased, use this short checklist. Have you used your own words? Have you retained the original meaning? To feel confident about this, don't just compare your sentence to a sentence in the original text. Reread as much of the original text as you need to be sure that you have accurately reflected the ideas of the original author in your own words. Does your paraphrase demonstrate that you really understand what you have read? Will your readers get a clear and accurate understanding when they read your work? Remember, readers generally won't refer back to the source. They are relying on your understanding to contribute to their own understanding. And finally, don't forget to acknowledge your source using whatever referencing system is required. Although you've done a lot of work to create your quality paraphrase, the idea belongs to someone else, so you must attribute it to the original author. Let's have a go at using some of these ideas in an activity. Here is a sentence from an academic article. In today's world, surveillance has become an intrinsic part of daily life. El Nala, 2020. The source is noted as I didn't write this sentence, El Nala did. What will you need to do to build up to writing a paraphrase? Make sure you understand. To do this, you may need to look up some words in the dictionary. Test your understanding by trying to state the idea out loud. If you had to explain this to someone, would you be able to? Note if there are any words you need to keep. Brainstorm some synonyms. Once you've finished your preparation, set the original text aside and write the ideas in your own words. When you are happy with your paraphrase, compare your writing with the original text. Pause this recording now while you work your way through the activity. Start the recording again once you are happy with the paraphrase you have written. Okay, I hope you found the activity interesting. Let's consider some ideas and suggestions. Did you need to look up any new words so that you could understand? Some students in previous workshops have found it helpful to check the meaning of surveillance, which can also be described as continuous observation or monitoring. Here, we already start to see the importance of context because, although it is unstated, surveillance in this sentence is clearly referring to electronic surveillance rather than shadowing, tailing, or a police stakeout. Even more frequently, students have found it useful to confirm their understanding of intrinsic, which means natural, part of the norm, something inbuilt, or something we take for granted. Now that you've looked up some tricky words, you need to make an honest assessment. Do you understand? If you do, great. If not, what do you need to do in order to fully comprehend what you have read? You need this understanding before you can proceed. Next, consider whether any of the words should be kept. Surveillance, maybe. It does have synonyms, but most of them tend to water down the meaning. Observation, supervision, investigation. Do any of these adequately replace the term surveillance? Perhaps not. For what words or groups of words should we use synonyms? In today's world, students suggested alternatives such as in contemporary society, nowadays, in present times, presently, currently. Think about whether any of these are better or worse options. We are generally required to write academic English, so nowadays may be considered too colloquial or informal. On the other hand, in contemporary society is probably the most formal option, so we might choose this. Intrinsic part. Students suggested synonyms such as unquestioned or taken for granted as good substitutes for intrinsic, and aspect or feature as appropriate synonyms for part. Daily life. Students mentioned everyday existence and reality as possible alternatives. Now you should have everything you need to start creating your paraphrase. With your own paraphrase in front of you, let's analyse some alternative paraphrases and see what we think. Option 1. In contemporary society, surveillance has been integrated into our everyday existence. What do you think? The synonyms are appropriate, but it seems that the student has merely copied the source and substituted some words and phrases. Colour is a good way to analyse how closely we have relied on the original sentence structure. Notice how each idea is presented in different words, but exactly the same order in both the source and the paraphrase. Let's look at one more example with a similar problem. With the level of similarity in sentence structure, this would not be considered successful paraphrasing. Did you notice the other important problem with these paraphrases? Where's the source? This needs to be included as part of the paraphrase. So if this is not good enough, what can we do? Let's move the ideas around. Here's another example from a student. Although this paraphrase may not be perfect, it fulfills our most important criteria. It uses the student's own words, it retains the original meaning, it demonstrates understanding, and it acknowledges the source. Also keep in mind that you don't need to replicate and rearrange the source word by word or phrase by phrase. One student suggested this alternative. Surveillance is ingrained in the fabric of present society. El Nala, 2020. This student found their own way and style of expressing the idea they read, recognising that the ideas of today's world and daily life can be combined into a single expression, the fabric of present society. In doing this example, we focused on the effort and energy required to paraphrase well. Hopefully your practice and the examples have helped you. Keep in mind that paraphrasing is a skill that we develop over time, so don't be disheartened if your practice today wasn't perfect. You need to keep doing examples, working towards paraphrasing more complex ideas and sources that are more than one sentence long. But every time, you will be replicating the same process. Another aspect of paraphrasing is learning to incorporate your paraphrases into your writing. This is an important skill that you will also need to learn, but it's not covered in today's workshop. Let's finish off the session with a different type of activity. On the next slide, you're going to look at a source that is several sentences long and then consider 3 alternative paraphrases to decide which is best. Make a few notes as you're reviewing the alternatives. What reasons do you have for your choice? What problems can you see in the paraphrases you didn't choose? Pause this recording while you make your decision and think about your rationale. If you chose paraphrase 2, well done. Let's look at each paraphrase in a bit more detail, starting with paraphrase 1. What problems did you identify here? Paraphrase 1 lacks precision and does not have the right register for academic writing. To illustrate, the paraphrase of the best explanation may help to explain changes Alan's original argument. These 2 expressions are not synonymous. The lack of date in the paraphrase may be an oversight as it relies on the general knowledge of the reader. Important information may have been overlooked in the paraphrase. Word choices such as bosses are not formal enough for academic writing. Due to the source incorporation at the end of the paragraph, it may also be unclear exactly which ideas in the paraphrase came from the original source. Turning now to paraphrase 3 and looking closely at the first sentence. The attempted paraphrase is not satisfactory as it is too similar to the original text. Consider the following examples. Argues, claims. Best, clearest. British, UK, found, seen, studying, examining. Sentence 1 is almost unchanged. Copying and changing a few words is not paraphrasing. The second sentence in Paraphrase 3 reveals the same problem. One synonym and the reversed order of existing language is not paraphrasing. If you pause the recording and take a look at sentence 3, you will see similar problems. And the same again in sentence 4. But can you see another problem here? The attempted paraphrase actually changes the meaning of the original idea. If you think back to our original checklist, the writer has changed the meaning and in doing so also indicates that they haven't fully understood what they have read. In contrast, Paraphrase 2 uses good vocabulary choices to produce language variety and demonstrates clear understanding. In order to express the original ideas in their own style, the writer of the paraphrase has also changed the paragraph structure rather than transforming the source sentence by sentence. Here are a few examples. The location of the Industrial Revolution has become the birthplace. The early 18th century has been transformed to the early 1700s. No other European country is now uniquely in Europe. We've come to the end of this workshop. As promised, we have reviewed reasons for paraphrasing, recapped strategies for paraphrasing, checked our ability to recognise good from bad paraphrasing, and developed skills for paraphrasing. Thank you for your time today. Please stay in touch. You can visit our webpage to find out about other workshops and services, or you can email us at languageandlearningsupport@cdu.edu.au.